I've spent the last 5 years editing hundreds of manuscripts, romance, thrillers, literary fiction, memoirs, and there are 7 mistakes I see in almost every single one. But here's the thing. Nobody is talking about them. Not the craft books, not the writing courses, not even most editors. You know the basics by now. Show, don't tell, start with action, cut the adverbs. But what about the mistakes that aren't in any writing guides? The ones that make your manuscript feel off in a way you can't quite name. Here's what I've learned after reading hundreds of manuscripts. Your main enemy as a writer isn't bad grammar or weak descriptions. It's confusion and boredom. Confusion when readers can't follow what's happening, boredom when readers understand perfectly but they just don't care. Every manuscript's problem falls into one of these 2 categories, and the 7 mistakes I'm about to show you, they're the invisible structural issues that either confuse your reader or flatten their emotional experience. Sometimes they do both at once. These aren't in the craft books because they're hard to name, because they don't have catchy labels. But they're the difference between a manuscript that's technically correct and one that's impossible to put down. So today I'm sharing 7 advanced mistakes I see constantly, but almost never hear anyone teaching. Mistake number 1 is the emotional mismatch. This is when your tone, pacing, and prose don't match the emotional temperature of what's actually happening in the scene. You're writing a tense moment in a calm voice, or a quiet moment but with breathless urgency. The content says one thing, the style says another, and the reader feels the disconnect even if they can't name it. Here's what this looks like. The gunman stepped into the bank. Rachel's heart was racing. She wondered if anyone else had noticed him yet. She slowly reached for her phone in her purse, trying not to draw attention. She was really scared. She hoped someone would do something soon. Now, do you see the problem? There's a gunman. This should be terrifying, but the prose is actually strolling along. The sentences are long and contemplative. We're getting her internal commentary about being scared instead of feeling the fear. The emotional temperature of the scene, which is the terror, doesn't match the emotional temperature of the prose. It's more calm observation. Watch what happens when we match them up. The gunman stepped into the bank. Rachel froze, reached for her purse, clutched her phone. Don't look, don't move. Her hand shook. Too much, he'd see. Someone do something. Now, as you can tell, the prose feels panicked. Short sentences, fragments, internal monologue that's not commentary. It's survival instinct. And the style matches the emotion. Here's the opposite problem. Writing a quiet moment with too much energy. Sarah sat on the porch. The sun was setting. She took a sip of tea. It was warm. She felt at peace. So those sentences are fighting against the content. This is supposed to be peaceful, but the punctuation and short sentences are giving a completely different vibe. So the fix here is before you write a scene, identify its emotional temperature. Tense, quiet, chaotic, melancholy, urgent, and then match your prose to it. Tense scenes will need short sentences, fragments, active verbs. Quiet scenes require longer sentences, softer rhythm, more space. Chaotic scenes need run-ons, interruptions, sensory overload. When your style matches your content, readers feel the emotion instead of just reading about it. Mistake number 2 are scenes with no collision. This is where you write a scene where nothing clashes. Nobody's objective is blocked, no one disagrees, nothing reverses or changes direction. Things happen, but they happen smoothly, and smooth scenes are boring scenes. Here's what a scene with no collision looks like. Marcus needed to talk to his sister about their mother's estate. He called her, she answered, he explained the situation, she agreed with his plan, they decided to meet on Tuesday. End scene. Everything went exactly as expected. Marcus wanted something, and he got it without any resistance. No collision, no conflict, no reason for this scene to exist. Now here's the same scene with collision. Marcus needed to talk to his sister about their mother's estate. He called her. Not now, Marcus. This can wait. The lawyer needs, I said, not now. Her voice cracked. I can't talk about dividing up her things like she's already gone. Silence. She is gone, Lisa. To you, maybe. Now we have something colliding. Marcus's urgency versus Lisa's grief. His practicality versus her denial. What he thinks is obvious versus what she can't accept. Now that's a scene. Collision doesn't always mean argument. It can be two goals that both happen, information that changes everything mid-scene, a character trying to do something and failing, or a choice that's just not a good option. Your fix, before you write a scene, ask what's colliding here. If the answer is nothing, then you don't have a scene. You have a transaction. Add resistance, add complication, add the thing that doesn't go according to plan. Scenes work when something crashes into something else. Mistake number 3 is false progression. This is the illusion of plot. Scenes that look busy but don't actually change anything that can't be undone. Your character is moving, talking, doing things, but the story itself isn't progressing because nothing meaningful has changed. Here's what false progression looks like. In chapter 5, Sarah investigates the warehouse and finds a clue, a business card. Chapter 6, Sarah goes to the office on the business card and talks to the receptionist. The owner isn't in today. Come back tomorrow. Chapter 7, Sarah comes back tomorrow. The owner still isn't in. Try next week. So stuff is happening. Sarah is actively investigating, but nothing is progressing. She's moving through space and time, but the story is treading water. Real progression means something changes that can't be reversed. It could be that information is revealed that reframes everything, a relationship shifts that can't go back, a choice is made that closes a door, someone gains or loses something permanent. Here's the same sequence with actual progression. Chapter 5. Sarah investigates the warehouse and finds a business card. Sarah goes to the office, the owner isn't in, but Sarah bribes the receptionist for his home address. Now she's crossed a line. Now she's breaking rules. Chapter 7. Sarah shows up at his house. He opens the door. I was wondering when you'd figure it out. Now we're progressing. Sarah didn't just move to a new location. She made a choice that changed her, bribing someone. She escalated. And the reveal in chapter 7 reframes her entire investigation. So your fix is at the end of every scene, ask, what changed that can't be undone? If the answer is nothing, you have false progression. Either cut the scene or add a real change, a loss, a gain, a shift, a reveal. Readers can feel when you're just stalling. Now, if you're watching this and thinking, I know I'm doing some of these things, but I have no idea how to spot them in my own manuscript, that's completely normal. There are kinds of structural issues that are almost impossible to see when you're inside your own story. That's exactly what our editing team is for. Over 11 years of experience, some of the best editors in the industry. They find these invisible problems and show you exactly how to fix them. If you want that level of feedback on your manuscript, there's a link in the description. Mistake number 4, internal monologue that isn't actually thought. This is when you write a character's thoughts, but they're not really thinking. They're giving the reader exposition, or explaining the plot, or providing commentary. It's the author's voice dressed up as the character's internal monologue. And here's what that looks like. Jane looked at the photograph. She remembered that this photo was taken 3 years ago at her sister's wedding, which was held at the Riverside Inn. Her sister had worn a blue dress. Jane had been happy that day, but also sad because their mother had passed away 6 months earlier and wasn't there to see it. It was complicated. These aren't Jane's thoughts. This is the author explaining backstory to the reader. Real thoughts don't narrate facts that the character already knows. Real thoughts are reactive, fragmented, or associative. Let me illustrate. Jane looked at the photograph, the blue dress. Mom should have been there. That's thought. It's not explaining the backstory, it's reacting to it emotionally. The reader still gets the information, sister, wedding, blue dress, dead mother, but now it feels like actual human thinking instead of a Wikipedia entry inside someone's head. So your fix is read your internal monologue out loud. If it sounds like narration, it's not thought, it's exposition. Real thoughts are reactive. oh no, not again, finally, or they're incomplete, things like he didn't, he couldn't have, or associative, jumping from one thing to another without transition. Maybe they're present focused, reacting to now and not recounting events from the past. So when you write internal monologue as actual thought, it disappears into the character. When you write it as exposition, the reader sees you as the author. Mistake number 5 is convenience, superpowers, and props. This is when a character suddenly has a skill, object, or piece of knowledge, but only because the plot needs them to have it right now. You haven't seeded it, you haven't established it, it just appears when it's convenient. And the reader feels like the author is cheating in these moments. Here's what it looks like. They were trapped in the lock room, no way out. Wait, Marcus said, I know how to pick locks. My uncle taught me when I was 12. He pulled a paperclip from his pocket and opened the door in 30 seconds. We're all thinking, where did this skill come from? We've spent 10 chapters with Marcus, and this is the first time we're hearing that he can pick locks. It feels planted. It feels like the author needed him to escape, so they gave him a convenient skill. Here's how you fix it. Seed it much earlier. So maybe in chapter 2, Marcus fidgeted with the lock on his desk drawer. Old habit from childhood. His uncle used to test him, hiding candy in locked boxes, and made a game of it. And then in chapter 10, they were trapped. Marcus looked at the lock, then at Sarah's hairpin. Give me that. Can you actually? We're going to find out. Now, you can probably see the difference here. The skill was established in chapter 2 when there was no plot pressure. It felt like character detail, not plot convenience. And then when it shows up in chapter 10, we remember it. We don't feel cheated. And so the same applies to props. Don't have your character suddenly pull out a weapon or tool we didn't even know they had. Don't give them knowledge they couldn't possibly have. Don't introduce a solution that wasn't present in the problem. Your fix is any skill, prop, or knowledge that solves a plot problem must be established at least 3 scenes before it's needed. Seed it early, make it feel like world texture, not plot machinery. Then, when it saves the day, readers feel clever for remembering, not annoyed at the convenience. Mistake number 6 is called transparent author moves. This is any moment where the reader suddenly sees you, the writer, instead of seeing just the story. Another way of putting this is that the puppet strings become visible. A common example is the mirror description. Jane looked in the mirror. She saw her long brown hair, green eyes, and the scar on her left cheek from the accident when she was 7. Why is she cataloguing her own appearance? She knows what she looks like. This is, of course, the author describing the character to the reader, not the character actually thinking. The other way this shows up is in the heavy-handed setup. So Marcus checked his phone, 11:47 a.m. He had 13 minutes before the meeting. Why have we been given the same time twice? Because something's going to happen at noon and you want us to watch the clock. We can feel you setting up the tension. Then there is the other way we see this, which is the as you know dialogue. The as you know, Jane, our father died 10 years ago and left us this house in his will. No one actually talks like that. This is the author informing the reader through dialogue. Or you may have seen this in the form of the convenient greeting. Every single chapter starts with good morning, or hey, or someone answering the phone. This is you, the author, not knowing how to start the scene, so you've defaulted to a greeting. So the fix here is read your scenes looking for moments where the character is behaving unnaturally. Are they describing themselves in a mirror because they would or because you need them to? Are they explaining things they already know because it's realistic or because you need the reader to know? Are they greeting each other because that's how the scene should start or because you didn't know how else to begin? If you can feel yourself moving the characters like chess pieces, then the reader will be able to feel this too. So make every character action driven, not author convenient. When the reader stops seeing you and feeling you as the writer, they will disappear into the story. Okay, mistake number 7 is when the reader outruns the story. This is when your audience figures out the mystery twist or the pattern way before your characters do. And then they have to sit through chapters of the protagonist slowly catching up to what they already know. It destroys tension. because tension requires uncertainty. And if the reader already knows the answer, there's no uncertainty. Here's how this happens. You give the reader all the clues the detective has, plus additional scenes from other point of views. Or you write the villain's perspective so we know exactly what they're planning. Or you make the twist so heavily foreshadowed that it becomes obvious. Then your protagonist spends 5 chapters investigating, deliberating, being surprised by things the reader figured out in chapter 3. An example of this would be reader by chapter 5. Oh, obviously the best friend is the killer. The protagonist in chapter 15, wait, could it be the best friend? And the reader is there screaming, yes, we've been waiting for you to catch up for 10 chapters. So the solution is control information order very carefully. Either give the reader and the protagonist the same information at the same time, which is the classic detective story structure, or give the reader less information than the protagonist, so the reveal surprises everyone. Or, and this is advanced, let the reader figure it out first, but make the tension about whether the protagonist will figure it out in time, not whether or not it's true. So an example is, we know the bomb is under the table. The characters don't. The tension isn't, is there a bomb? It's, will they find it before it explodes? And that's classic Hitchcock, and it works incredibly well. But if your tension is who's the killer, and the reader knows, but the protagonist doesn't, well then you've lost your engine. Your fix is after every reveal, ask, when does the reader figure this out versus when does the protagonist figure this out? If the reader is consistently ahead by more than a scene or two, you're revealing information in the wrong order. Either delay the reader's realization or speed up the protagonists. If you're finding these helpful and you want more deep dive writing advice like this, I send out a weekly newsletter where I break down techniques and problems I'm seeing in the manuscripts I'm actively working on. Stuff I don't always cover in videos. It's free, links in the description if you want to join. All right, let's wrap this up. Your main enemies as a writer are confusion and boredom. And now you know what to look for. Go back to your manuscript and ask, does my prose match the emotional temperature? Do my scenes have collision? Are things actually progressing? Is my internal monologue real thought or hidden exposition? Are my skills and props seeded early? Can readers see me moving the pieces around? Are readers solving the mystery too early? And look, any rule can be broken on purpose. These problems show up when you break them by accident. Comment down below with any of these that you find, how you are fixing them, or if you would like help with fixing them. And one last thing before you go. Every year I take on 5 ghostwriting clients, people I work with directly to write their books from the ground up. One of those spots has already been taken for this year. If you've been sitting on a story you want to tell, but haven't had the time or structure to write it yourself, and you want to work with me to make this happen, then reach out. There's a link in the description. Thanks for watching. Now go and find these invisible mistakes. YouTube will now be recommending another video of mine for you just here, bursting with value to improve your writing.